Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I now commend the program and welcome you to the joint webinar between Asian Vision Institute and the Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Study on Cambodia's aspiration for the successful ASEAN Chairmanship 2022, the next step toward strengthened preparation. Next slide, please. To begin, please allow me to introduce myself and my affiliation. My name is Him Sutiroth, and I am the Program Coordinator of the Asian Vision Institute and the MC of today's event. Next slide. The objective of our webinar today are to exchange different stakeholders' perspective on how to strengthen Cambodian preparation for the ASEAN Chairmanship 2022 and to identify the recommendation to strengthen our preparations efforts. Next slide, please. Without further delay, please allow me to briefly inform Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, of today's agenda as follows. First, we will have a welcoming remark by our three guests of honor, then group photo, panel discussion, participant pre-webinar survey result, the break, then breakout group discussion, and breakout group brief back, participant polling, and last but not least, the closing remark by our president from AVI. Next, please. Also, I wish to inform that to encourage active and respectful discussion today, we request all participants to adhere to three shared core values, namely connecting people, connecting knowledge, and connecting action, while observing transparency, mutual respect, and inclusion. Next, please. To encourage open discussion, the non-attribution policy states that you may not quote anyone by name without the express consent of their person. Plenary section will be recorded for internal use only and will not be distributed. Next slide, please. And allow me to double check the status of your camera and microphone before moving to our main agenda. So please kindly have your mic mute and your camera off when you're not speaking. To ask question, please kindly click chat button and type the question there. So the question will be gathered by our moderator and it will be answered live by the speaker during the Q&A session. Next slide, please. Please also display your first name or given name and your organization on the video by first go to your name in the participant list, click on More button, choose Rename, type your first or given name and then comma and your organization name. Lastly, don't forget to click OK. Then you will see your Zoom name display in the same format like the pictures shown here. Yes. So next slide, please. Taking this opportunity, I would like to inform that in our webinar today, we have honorable participants from several government ministry and organizations in Cambodia, academic and think tanks institutions, independent scholars, academics, and finally, observer from the United States. Biography of our speaker and AVI and DKI APCSS faculties and staffs are also available online on the link provided to you. Next, please. Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to move to our main agenda. May I now invite Rear Admiral Patay Goma Tau Tau, Director of DKIA-PCSS, to deliver his welcoming remark.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sotiro. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Aloha. The Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies is very excited and proud to be partnering with the Asian Vision Institute in this significant conversation where we are helping assist Cambodia in their preparations in this leadership role as the ASEAN Chair for 2022. First, I would like to acknowledge there are so many distinguished visitors up. Let me first start by acknowledging our event partner, AVI's President, Dr. Chiang Banarith. Thank you, sir, for allowing us to partner with you on this very important event. Also acknowledge Commander Melissa Brown, who is the U.S. mission to ASEAN. His Excellency Sim V. Riak, the Director General of ASEAN Department, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation in Cambodia. Her Excellency Lieutenant General Nem Sowadi, Deputy Director General of Policy and Foreign Affairs, Ministry of National Defense in Cambodia. In today's session, we have a lot of distinguished speakers, and I'd like to acknowledge up front Mrs. Yura Suma Adnan, who is the Acting Director of the Sultan Haji Hassanal Bolkiah Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies in Brunei. Also, Dr. Lee Din Tien, who is the Director General of the Institute of Foreign Policy and Strategic Studies in the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam. As you can see in the webinar series, we have quite a few participants, but I want to highlight and take this opportunity to highlight some DKI APCSS distinguished alumni, and several of them. Major General Sophia Sum, Major General Van Na Kun, and Mrs. Farah Monica from the ASEAN Secretariat. Welcome and aloha to you guys. Good to see you participating. Also want to acknowledge the U.S. observers from the U.S. Embassy in Phnom Penh, as well as the U.S. mission to ASEAN and the U.S. State Department, specifically the Multilateral Affairs. Quite a few distinguished visitors, and it's a long list, but it highlights the diversity and the seniority of the participants that are representing the ministries and organizations with ASEAN responsibilities and interests, as well as independent scholars. Not to mention that there are over 11 ministries and organizations with a total of over 63 participants up to the Director General level of seniority. So a very impressive group that are assembled today for this series. It's my anticipation here at DKI APCSS that we'll hopefully lead, that these discussions will hopefully lead to productive topics and areas where we can network and help to strengthen Cambodia's preparations for this very crucial leadership role. So in conclusion, we really look forward to deepening our partnership, especially through the 3 webinar series that will be coming up in the following months to discuss in greater detail what could be realized in laying out Cambodia's priorities in the ASEAN political, security, economic, and social cultural communities. And once again, I really want to thank AVI for this opportunity to work together on a vital topic to Cambodia. So I wish all the participants success in identifying concrete ways that we can strengthen Cambodia's preparations, processes, and also wishing Cambodia success in the ASEAN Chair in 2022. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Rear Admiral, for your insightful remarks. So next slide, please. Okay, I would like to invite Ms. Melissa Brown, Chargé d'Affaires of the U.S. Mission to ASEAN in Jakarta, to deliver her remarks. Please, Ms. Melissa.
Thank you so much. Good morning to everybody, to all my friends in Cambodia, across the region, my friends back in Washington as well. Before I do begin my remarks, I wanted to thank the Royal Government of Cambodia for the 70 years of partnership between the United States and Cambodia. That's an impressive milestone that we can celebrate together. I also wanted to thank the Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies and also Asian Vision Institute for putting this event together and inviting me to help launch this workshop. I wanted to acknowledge Rear Admiral Goma Tautau, the director of APCSS, who we just heard from. Also, Dr. Chiang Van Rith, president of AVI. His Excellency Sim Viriak, ASEAN Director General from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Our partners from both Brunei and Vietnam, sharing their chairmanship expertise, and excellencies, colleagues from across all the other ministries. Despite the many challenges that we faced in 2020 and the incredibly difficult start to 2021, I really appreciate you taking the time and participating in this series of workshops. And I really am hopeful that it will provide a platform for Cambodia to explore its priorities in the upcoming ASEAN chairmanship year. I think the turnout here at this event demonstrates the commitment across the Cambodian government to making 2022 a success. I think we're all looking forward to some good news out there. I note that we have a diverse cross-section of ministries, and that includes the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Council for Development of Cambodia, and the Ministries of Education and Defense, among many others, I understand. This collaborative approach across the government will really ensure that the priorities you set for your chairmanship will be achieved. I am really proud to be part of this effort. In fact, I wanted to share with you before I get started my unexpected connection to Cambodia and ASEAN. Cambodia first chaired ASEAN back in 2002. And you're wondering, what does that have to do with me? Well, that was the very same year that I received a tiny little Cambodian flag where I was sent to language training to learn Khmer for my very first diplomatic posting. While I didn't arrive to Phnom Penh until the following year, I do remember well learning to read very, very slowly in Khmer, the news, and seeing much information on Cambodians' ASEAN chairmanship. But more broadly, the United States has a long history of supporting ASEAN. It was 43 years ago that the United States became ASEAN's first dialogue partner. And in 2011, we were the first dialogue partner to open a resident mission here in Jakarta. That's the mission that I lead today. As we continue to grow our relationship, the United States continues to demonstrate our unwavering partnership with ASEAN. And what we're looking for is a prosperous, healthy, secure, and unified ASEAN, because that's in our interest too. I thought I would give you a quick snapshot of how the United States collaborates with ASEAN. So let's look at how the United States is contributing to the 5 broad strategies of ASEAN's comprehensive recovery framework. That's the roadmap to recover from COVID-19. In the first strategy, enhancing health systems, the United States is building on more than $3.5 billion in US public health assistance to ASEAN over the last 2 decades. Since the onset of the pandemic, the United States has given more than $87 million to ASEAN countries to help fight COVID-19. And in February, we had some great news where the Biden administration announced an initial contribution of $2 billion to the COVAX facility, which will help 92 low and middle income economies access safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines. Another $2 billion is pledged for throughout 2021 and 2022. For the second strategy, strengthening human security, the United States has demonstrated time and again our commitment to help ASEAN governments protect the vulnerable and provide opportunities for women, promote gender equality, achieve food security, and mainstream human rights. I know these are all important issues for Cambodia as well. We're continuing our commitment to human capital development in ASEAN, and programs like the Young Southeast Asia Leaders Initiative, which we call YSEALI, have really facilitated so much exchange, including 120,000 trips back and forth, exchanges back and forth for students and young professionals, including thousands from Cambodia. I know they're very active on social media. Under Strategy 3, covering economic recovery and regional integration, the United States continues to be a steadfast partner. In fact, despite the challenges of COVID-19 and the economic downturn that resulted, total trade between the United States and ASEAN increased by 5% to $308 billion. ASEAN exports to the United States increased by over 10%. Our flagship USAID Foreign Assistance Program has helped build and implement the ASEAN single window for customs clearance, and USAID's ASEAN Policy Implementation Program provides national level assistance to help ASEAN members plug into that single window. ASEAN's fourth strategy for COVID-19 recovery centers on digital transformation, which we all agree is a great area of potential for ASEAN. We're helping the ASEAN Secretariat create the ASEAN Digital Integration Index that measures each ASEAN member's progress in developing their e-commerce enabling environment, and the e-payments readiness index, which will help ASEAN governments identify opportunities to improve e-payments, which is obviously a key component to e-commerce. Both of these studies are going to help bridge the digital divide between the ASEAN countries and create a more cohesive and predictable environment for e-commerce. The fifth strategy is one of the most important for my administration, advancing towards a more sustainable and resilient future. The United States is committed to help ASEAN build back better through promoting sustainable energy and infrastructure, helping ASEAN adapt to and mitigate the adverse effects of climate change, supporting conservation and maritime sustainability efforts, and partnering on science, technology, and innovation. Why do I point out these examples? I just wanted to use these as an example of how to reiterate that the United States is a dependable partner that engages with ASEAN to accelerate the recovery from the pandemic, which we know is one of ASEAN's most pressing goals. In that same way, we are committed to partnering with Cambodia to support its productive and successful turn as chair. Over the next few workshops, as Cambodia begins to outline its priorities for its chairmanship, the United States will be there to help. As chair, Cambodia will shepherd issues that have broad geopolitical implications for the region, like promoting a nuclear-free Korean peninsula, protecting the rule of law in the maritime space, fostering the role of women and youth in peace and security, and upholding human rights across the Indo-Pacific. In addition, a successful chairmanship often means taking on the region's most pressing challenges head-on and adapting a new challenge that may divert the agenda from your priorities. We are very fortunate today to have a panelist from Vietnam. Vietnam faced a challenge in its host year with the onset of COVID-19, and they can share experiences about how Vietnam pivoted to produce a robust response to the region's challenges brought on by the pandemic, as well as successes more broadly hosting ASEAN. We also have a panelist from Brunei who can attest the need to be even more flexible as it grapples not only with COVID-19, but the ongoing crisis in Burma. In 2022, Cambodia will be looked to as a leader to objectively and productively mediate, manage, and forge cooperation on the highest profile issues. I'm absolutely confident that Cambodia is up to this tall task. Finally, like with our strong support for Cambodia's ASEAN accession back in 1999, I did want to share that the United States supports Timor-Leste's bid to join ASEAN. We engage with Timor-Leste to help build their capacity towards what could become a contributing member to ASEAN. We invite them to participate in programs like the YSEALI program, as well as the US-Singapore Third Country Training Program. Of course, we understand that Timor-Leste's accession is driven by ASEAN. That's ASEAN's choice. We are particularly grateful for Prime Minister Hun Sen's public call for Dili's accession. To achieve member state agreement for Timor-Leste under the Cambodia's chair year would certainly be a historic achievement. In conclusion, Cambodia's chairmanship provides a unique opportunity to demonstrate regional leadership and advance regional cooperation. I am here to reiterate the strong US commitment to helping Cambodia and ASEAN more broadly succeed now and in 2022 and beyond. Your success is our success, as well as ASEAN's success. I wish all of you a very productive workshop. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Melissa Brown for your priceless remarks. Next slide, please. Now, may I respectfully invite His Excellency Mr. Simvaria, Director General of the General Department of ASEAN of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Cambodia to deliver his remark. His Excellency, please.
Hello, good morning. I hope you can hear me. Ms. Melissa Brown, Chargé d'Affaires AI of the U.S. Mission to ASEAN, Dr. Chairmanship, President of AVI, Rear Admiral Pete Kumar Thao, Director of Daniel Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, Dr. Le Dinh Thinh, Director General of Institute of Foreign Policy and Strategic Studies of Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, Ms. Yura Suma Adnan, Acting Director, Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies, Dr. Leng Thidet, Director of Mekong Center for Strategic Studies of ABIs. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to extend my appreciation to the U.S. mission to ASEAN and U.S. Embassy here in Cambodia, ASEAN Vision Institute ABI, and Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Study for making this event happen. Thank you, Melissa Brown, for your briefing on the solid and long-term U.S. engagement with ASEAN. And I believe that with the new administration, all ASEAN members welcome the continued commitment of the U.S. to the region for the common interest of peace, stability, and prosperity. 2022 is just around the corner, and Cambodia will soon undertake the role of ASEAN Chairmanship for the third time. This would be a moment of pride and also pressure. ASEAN has always been an integral part of Cambodia's foreign policy. Despite being a latecomer, Cambodia has proven to be an active and constructive supporter of the ASEAN community building. The country's boldness in assuming her first ASEAN chairmanship in 2022, after merely 3 years of her accession to the regional grouping, demonstrate a strong political will and unwavering commitment of Cambodia top leadership toward regional integration and multilateralism. Such commitment remains unchanged, but ever more resolute. We are proud to be an active actor in the ASEAN community that is very relevant in the global community of nations. Despite being criticized as a talk shop, countries outside the region often look for ASEAN for a platform to address concerns in the region, to look for investment destination, for trade partner, and for all other benefits that functional multilateralism can offer. As a matter of fact, despite challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, ASEAN is probably one of the most active regional bodies that are making real efforts to provide innovative and regionally coordinated solutions to these unprecedented challenges. The establishment of the COVID-19 ASEAN Response Fund, the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, the ASEAN Travel Corridor Arrangement, the proposed establishment of the ASEAN Center for Public Health Emergency and Emerging Disease, and the development of the ASEAN Public Health Emergency Coordination System are key evidences of proactive policy coordination works across the region that is probably unseen in other regions of the world. As an ASEAN citizen, we should be proud of that, instead of sinking into the talk shop narrative of ASEAN. So then, what is next for Cambodia chairmanship in 2022? First and foremost, it is important that we need to identify key megatrends affecting the region. COVID-19 will be here to stay, and countries around the world will continue to struggle on how to rebuild economies and businesses that are almost at the brink of collapse. Operational-wise, the prospect of having physical ASEAN meeting is still gloomy, even if Cambodia strongly desired for physical meetings in 2022. Great power rivalry will persist, and the emerging bifurcation of politics, trade, economies, cyberspace, and technology is a growing matter of concern. Within the region, traditional security concern, namely the possible emergence of civil strife, complex land and maritime border issue, will continue. For non-traditional security issues, such as natural disaster, cybercrimes, cross-border crimes, trafficking in person, internally displaced person, climate change will intensify the magnitude of challenges that ASEAN has to deal with. Of course, Cambodia is not too naive to rule out that we would succeed or fail in making a historical turn for any mega trends when our chairmanship ends in 2022. This is where pragmatism and idealism clash. Cambodia, of course, we will pursue idealism in a pragmatic manner, but we also hold that idealism should not be the end to itself. We also hold that Cambodia's chairmanship is not a standalone chairmanship to be judged by oversimplification of specific success or failure. Cambodia chairmanship is obviously a continuation of various chairmanships, and any achievement or progress is credited to all the 10 members. This is where the ASEAN ways come into play in the maintenance of ASEAN centrality and relevance within the challenging and very dividing mega trends. The fact that ASEAN has continued to be cohesive in one piece is because we maintain the modus operandi of ASEAN way that cherishes unity in diversities, consensus building, and dialogue and consultation in a discreet manner that is respectful to sovereignty and the principle of non-interference, especially when addressing difficult issues. Because ASEAN promotes unity for peace, unity for cooperation, unity for development, but not unity for confrontation. Looking at these mega trends, it is one of the most important priorities for Cambodia in 2022 that we shall continue to maintain and manage the situation, environment that is conducive for peace and stability to sustain and prosperity to be enhanced. Like every other previous ASEAN chairman, we always try to find issues that bind us together instead of those that are dividing us. Not that we are shying away from problems, but simply because ASEAN is trying to be practical in terms of how we should find ways to move forward. For instance, on superpower rivalry, practically there is not much that ASEAN can do. If both superpowers can find or help find agenda that can enhance their cooperation instead of accusations and demonization, it would be a lot helpful for every ASEAN chair. But maybe it's just a merely wishful thinking. The other most important thing to do is try to promote the tangibility of benefits for the people. This is to address the most basic yet very difficult question from ASEAN citizens, asking that, what are the benefits of having ASEAN community? In identifying priorities for the Chairmanship 2022, we try to focus on how we could deliver tangible benefits for ASEAN citizens, something that are touchable and feelable, so that we can provide ASEAN citizens a strong sense of pride and hope for the future and confidence for the well-being of generation to come, with no one left behind. Along this line, we are trying to look at how we can enhance the tangibility for the people through our action on the COVID-19, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, various free trade agreements, intra-regional trade, digital economy, enhancement of migrant worker protection, enhancement of disaster management capabilities, climate change, railway connectivity, industrial connectivity, among others, on top of the existing tangible benefit, the like of visa-free traveling within ASEAN, ASEAN highway connectivity, opportunities for youth exchange and scholarship, infrastructure development, foreign direct investment, technical assistance, and development cooperation from partners, etc. We also try to ensure a proper balancing on and between the three pillars, namely the ASEAN political security community, ASEAN economic community, and socio-cultural community. Domestically, we want to ensure that we have everyone on board, taking the whole of Cambodia approach towards the undertaking of this important historical chairmanship. Regionally, we want to ensure that all benefits from the community building efforts are being shared at all levels and all sectors, and especially to every ASEAN citizen that this regional grouping is mandated to serve. I sincerely hope that through today's discussion, we can learn from multiple stakeholders on inputs, suggestions, and recommendations on how Cambodia should prepare for her 2022 ASEAN Chairmanship. I wish the event a great success with fruitful elaboration, especially on the tangibility of benefits for people in the region and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you, His Excellency, Mr. Samaria, for your inspirational remarks. Next, we have now come to the group photo session. So in this session, I would like to kindly invite and request Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, to kindly turn on your camera so that our technical team could screenshot the nice photo of us. So please, Excellency, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, please kindly turn on your camera. Okay, so thank you, Excellency, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. So now I wish to turn the floor over to the panel discussions on preparing to chair ASEAN, the key insight and lesson learned. So may I now pass the mic to our moderator, Dr. Leng Thurit, Director of Mekong Center for Strategic Study of API. So Dr. Thurit, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thurit, for handing over the floor to me. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, today we have great honors and privilege to have two honorable speakers. The first one is Mrs. Yura Suma Adnan, the acting director of Sultan Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies from Brunei, and Dr. Lê Đình Tinh, Director General, Institute of Foreign Policy and Strategic Study from the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam as our honorable speaker today. And both of them will share their country perspective on the preparation of the ASEAN Chairmanship. So it is a great opportunity for us as a Cambodian to learn from those preparation from the previous chair, Vietnam, and the current chair this year, which is Brunei. So, but before we start, please allow me to gently remind our speakers that we will have like only 10 minutes for each presentation. So please try your best to make your presentation within the time frame. And after that, after the presentation, we will have the Q&A sessions, which the participants in this room will be expected to post some questions. In case you have any questions, so please feel free to post your question in the chat box, or you can directly ask the question to our speakers. Yeah, so without further delays, please welcome Mrs. Yura Suma Adnan. Mrs. Yura Suma Adnan, the floor is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Dr. Langtira for the kind introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all sirs and madams joining the webinar today. May I first take this opportunity to thank the Asian Vision Institute for extending the invite to the Sultan Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah Institute of Defense and Strategic Study to speak in this important workshop series on Cambodia's aspirations for a successful ASEAN Chairmanship 2022, co-hosted together with DKI APCSS. It is certainly an honor for me to accept the invitation and share a perspective from Brunei on preparing to chair ASEAN, key insights and lessons learned. Excuse me. In this regard, I will particularly look into the APSC, the ASEAN Political Security Community Pillar, namely sharing our experiences in preparation for the ADMM. Next slide, please. Thank you. The scope and focus of presentation as seen on the slides, I hope to share the 2021 priorities, the contribution to the APSC by the defense sector, a reflection on the challenges as ASEAN chair in 2013 and today in 2021, to provide a perspective on Brunei's approach as chair, in particular in defense sector, and to leave with final thoughts on ASEAN Chairmanship as a whole. Next slide, please. Similar to Cambodia for 2022, the year 2021 marks the third time that Brunei Darussalam becomes chair of the ASEAN, and the previous two was in 2013 and 2001. So as most are aware of, the current ASEAN theme is we care, we prepare, we prosper. And this was announced by His Majesty during the handover ceremony of the ASEAN Summit on November 2020. And there are three priorities. And first, it seeks to harness the caring nature of ASEAN by building a harmonious and resilient community with its people at the center. Secondly, it's preparing and adapting to the future by ensuring that ASEAN remains relevant and its people taking advantage of new opportunities, as well as to overcome existing and future challenges. And lastly, striving to create opportunities to enhance the sustainable prosperity so that we are prospering together as a united region. So for the ADMM, We have aligned with this national theme and have translated priorities for defense. Just looking at the theme, the role of defense sector is clearly in prepare, but we also recognize that our contribution through various ADMM initiatives and the ADMM plus EWG's activities indirectly have impacts to elements of care and prosper as well. Next slide, please. So in further understanding what Brunei can do as chair of the ADMM, we reflected on what is important about ASEAN. We looked at how APSC contributes to ASEAN community, and we assessed where the ADMM is in achieving the APSC. So we still see ASEAN remain as a key regional security architecture in the Asia Pacific. And in fact, it constitutes as a stabilizer in bringing together ASEAN member states and its dialogue partners in building habits of cooperation. It values collective leadership and addressing security challenges in a comprehensive manner. And to this end, we see it important to be inclusive and outward-looking. The ASEAN frameworks of cooperation in all three pillars, including APSC, instill shared norms and values through its promotion of dialogue and consultations. So over the years, we see the ADMM upholding these fundamental principles and giving much importance on centrality, working based on collective responsibility and focus on capability and capacity building, as well as promoting understanding through strategic dialogue. Next slide, please. If I could just quickly share the status of defense cooperation in ways or the ways that we contribute to the APSC. There have been significant inroads since the inception of ADMM in 2006 and the ADMM Plus in 2010. And we see it achieving or fulfilling the APSC through its practical cooperation. Past ADMM chairmanships have taken up a number of strategic related issues regarding its processes, and we continue to move practical cooperation forward. And as of this year, we see 16 initiatives, a number of guideline papers. We have 7 expert working groups. There's some ADMM initiatives that's extended to our plus partners as well. And the current EWG cycle will be carried out from 2021 to the first quarter of 2024. The defense sector is also increasingly involved in cross-cutting or cross-sector, cross-pillar cooperation, especially in HADR. So with all these considerable ADMM initiatives and EWGs, we see greater potential to hold impactful activities within the existing practical corporations and initiatives. So aside from the area of defense-related meetings of area of DOD and ASPC, other aspects of defense sector engagements includes the meetings among our military, the engagements with plus countries through informal meetings and other platforms, meetings between our vice ministerial, so to speak, and also the role of track 2. So all this contributes towards plays a role in our defense diplomacy. Next slide, please. In preparation of our chairmanship, as we did in 2013 and now in 2021, we assessed our surroundings and we looked to the past chairmanship priority areas of cooperation. Similarly to Cambodia today, we conducted internal exercises within MINDEF and RBF, as well as in consultation with our key stakeholders. And it just so happens our preparation for ADMM coincides with our preparation for the next defense white paper. So what do we see? We see the main challenges for the region and as chair remaining the same, but yet the intensity and complexity has multiplied. Firstly, looking at the dynamic strategic landscape. I think this was mentioned before. Against the positive development ADMM, we face ongoing security challenges and against one of the most dynamic strategic landscape. And this saw increasing uncertainties in the security environment. There's been mention of traditional flashpoints that continue to persist, but more so we see an intertwine between economic, political, and you throw in technological interests being tied to national interests. We see major influential regional powers having their various strategic visions, concepts in working with us in this region. So despite all this, I think we have to underline that ASEAN have long realized having good relations is very important. And for defense cooperation, the focus remains on practical cooperation that is sustainable, which in turn contributes to the APSC. We also see complex security issues. The outbreak of COVID-19 is a reminder of expecting the unexpected future challenges or black swans. In an already complex security challenges, countries and region will continue to be preoccupied in addressing public health issues, ensuring sustainable economic growth, and defending its own security interests through cooperation. So while we've seen that over this 1 year, there has much cooperation that shifted, focusing on COVID-19, and rightly so. But of course, the ADMM also view it equally important to not lose track of ongoing security challenges in terrorism, violence and extremism, maritime security, cybersecurity that continues to evolve, and that brings wider security implications. And in spite of our current difficulties, we see these threats are even taken advantage of, and so keeps security on their toes. Next is the new norm that creates preconditions in cooperation. What do I mean by this is amidst the COVID-19 situation, and when we do come to a turning point of post-COVID-19 recovery, there will be a new norm. It will not be the norm that we used to know. And this sets new form of preconditions in our cooperation. For the military, for example, it has already posed difficulties and it has implications in our supporting role in non-traditional security challenges, including peacekeeping and peace support. It requires us to think of more measures to ensure the safety of our people. At the same time, we also recognize that the defense sector needs to continue and move forward through creative means to build on defense and military cooperation, as we see that our role contributes to an enabling environment for enduring peace, security, and stability. So against all this security backdrop, it makes the ADMM an even more important platform in the regional security architecture. Next slide, please. So looking at the broader chairmanship approach, the way we see it, Brunei has always been focused on building on the work done, even if it is incremental, and looks towards ensuring long-term objectives of ASEAN remains relevant and intact as we navigate in the changing environment. In defense, we see ourselves at a very important juncture as we mark our 15 years of ADMM cooperation. So in looking at where we are today, our chairmanship in defense, we see it very important to encourage and enhance cross-sector, cross-pillar cooperation. What does this mean? It means deepening our commitment, ensuring our initiatives that we initiated in ADMM in 2013 continue to be strengthened. For example, we're looking into enhancing usage of the ADI, the ASEAN Defense and Communication infrastructure as an architecture of communications between defense. We're looking into enhancing ASEAN Defense Interaction Program for the youth looking into specific themes, in particular, women, peace, security agenda. We look at our logistical support framework. We're looking at into activities to support military medicine, exercises, acknowledging the importance of supply chain. We see the need to encourage this cross-sector and pillar by creating synergy and collaboration where possible for ADMM to be future ready, by focusing on promoting ADMM initiatives and constantly reviewing our internal processes. We look, as I mentioned earlier, extending ADMM initiative to plus platforms and other ASEAN sectors. In ADR, we work in coordination with the ASEAN Committee of Disaster Management, and we encourage collaborative EWG exercise scenarios as well. We see that's important to continue the constructive and robust engagements that we have. We are consciously and placing greater emphasis on deepening confidence and trust together. And this is done by continuing the positive momentum of the ADMM and its related meetings with friends and partners. As we all know, in any multilateral setting, finding common grounds in addressing the various differences is very difficult. So, but it is within our interest to maintain dialogue and consultation among ASEAN and also with our friends and partners. And we see increasing interest for us to enhance external engagements with the current plus and even with the non-plus countries. So what we do in ADMM and what we're doing for our chairmanship is looking inwards to ourselves and finding ways to strengthen our processes while also continuing to look outwards so that we continue to work together with our friends and partners. And all this is always easier said than done, so it's hard work. And lastly, we see that it is very important to ensure the ASEAN-driven agenda is maintained within its processes and cooperation. While ASEAN have a very rich framework of cooperation, we're facing this dilemma of proliferations of meetings versus implementing cooperation to achieve our goals. So, and another point is our cooperation is highly dependent on personal interactions. This is where we build familiarity and confidence, and this is especially in military as well. So now faced with limitations, we are thinking, okay, so how do we go ahead? How do we maintain the cooperation while ensuring that ASEAN continue to have a say in shaping and influence the future of our region? So on this note, for us, for Brunei as the ADMM chair, we actually take upon us to do a stock taking of the ADMM. And we hope with our ASEAN colleagues, there will be a consensus to deliver a strategy paper for future of ADMM. So that brings me to the next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. Finally, allow me to close with final thoughts on ASEAN Chairmanship as a whole. I think ASEAN Chairmanship has never been easy. It will always be challenging because change is constant. But it's also rewarding seeing how far ASEAN have fared in spite of many views out there. If we look into the past, ASEAN has come across a number of crossroads. In the late 1990s, we faced the Asian financial crisis, but we saw the establishment of the ASEAN Plus 3 platform. In the 2000s, we saw the need for high-level interaction in maintaining our role as a hub of dialogue and consultation, and we saw the birth of East Asia Summit and the ADMM and ADMM Plus. In the first decades of 2000s, we saw the 9/11 incident. We saw terrorism in the forefront as a global threat and other non-traditional security evolving natural disasters causing economic loss and livelihood. And we place HADR right there in the forefront as well. And where we are now, we are seeing technological advancement, even competition in cyberspace. And while emerging technologies brought immense developments, it also brought risk to security and increasing competition. Global security issues with the outbreak of infectious diseases is actually not new, but with COVID-19, it certainly has reshaped. It saw us readjusting, reconfiguring, re-strategizing on how best we approach our cooperation and even our relations. So on this note, I have to commend Vietnam's leadership last year as they steer us to adjust and ensure that as ASEAN, we are cohesive and responsive. And using means of cooperation that's quite new for us in ASEAN through the VTC, because we very much value in-person meetings and interactions for so many years. So that brings to the next point about building on past work, which I see is key. In preparation, ASEAN, I think, must avoid coming up with grand gestures, and we must focus on realizing initiatives fitting with the time and our surroundings. And I see ASEAN moving towards that end. For us, we took an approach of looking at what has been done. We assess and identify what is missing or that needs to be built on. And more importantly, focus on what we can do beyond so that we are proactive in our preparation because our security challenges is more and more needing a multidimensional approach. And lastly, addressing our challenges through regional lens. I think at given any time as chairman and ASEAN as a whole, we always must be conscious to look through regional lens as well. And we've seen this at different times. Our previous chairman have stressed on the importance of being cohesive, coordinated, and our work to be sustainable and innovative. And as we're turning into a corner towards ASEAN Community 2025, there's a lot of reason for us to work hard together. So I think I'll end my presentation here. And may I take this opportunity to wish our colleagues the very best as Cambodia prepares for the next chairmanship. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Yura Sumanan, for your interesting presentations on the Brunei preparation for the ASEAN Chairmanship this year. So next, may I invite Dr. Lê Đình Trinh, the Director General of Institute of Foreign Policy and Strategic Studies of the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam. Dr. Lê Đình Trinh, the floor is yours now, please. Hello, Dr. Lê Đình Trinh. Hello, we can't hear you. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your leadership. And I really enjoy the webinar so far. And first off, let me express my sincere thanks to the Asian Vision Institute and the APCZS for giving me the chance to interact with this distinguished audience and talk about a very critical topic that I think is not just important for Vietnam, but also for Cambodia and the rest of the region. I will keep my talks very brief, so we have more time for the Q&A section that follows. So I just want to make very focus on 3 points. Point number one, looking back at the Vietnamese chairmanship of ASEAN, we can see that Vietnam take the chairmanship very seriously. And to do that, Vietnam prepare for the year, very thoroughly. And at some point, we think that Vietnam may prepare a little bit more serious than being required, because later on, as we see, we don't have a lot of physical meetings happen in cities and provinces of Vietnam, but instead we have mostly virtual meetings and online meetings. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so basically Vietnam priority for the Chairmanship 2020 is first of all focused on the ASEAN community building, and second, give emphasis to the current issues facing ASEAN, and lastly, to integrate the chairmanship priorities. And these priorities are mutually complementary. So all of these three priorities are exercised by Vietnam during 2020. And you can go from the political security pillar to the economic pillar and the social and cultural pillar. But the most important thing during the chairmanship for me, I think, is the ability of ASEAN under the chairmanship of Vietnam to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And it produced, the pandemic produced a long-lasting impact on the association and on the region. But on the other hand, Vietnam is able, with the support of ASEAN member states, to turn the table around a little bit, at least in the areas of streamlining ASEAN and make ASEAN a little bit more seamless in the way ASEAN works. So that is one of the key successes of the chairmanship, I think. So basically, that is the first very general overview of the Vietnam Chairmanship 2020. Now, the second point I would like to make in terms of lessons, what are the lessons that we can draw from the Vietnam Chairmanship of ASEAN 2020? For me, there are three very important lessons here. Number one is we have to show very strong confidence in multilateralism. We need more multilateral undertaking, not less. Even though if we look around the world right now, there are a lot of hindrances and challenges to multilateral cooperation efforts, but we need more, not less. That is my the first lesson I would like to share with you. Next slide, please. Yeah, and the second lesson here is because of the uncertainty of today's world, we need to be flexible, we need to be responsive, and quick to adapt to the new normalcy. So that is key to success in this uncertain world today. And that is vividly exemplified by the ASEAN responses to the COVID-19, and not just the COVID-19, but also the increasing complexity of the international strategic environment, including the heightened tension between major powers, the US and China. So that is the second point and lessons that I think is critical for ASEAN and for us. The final lesson here is having the support of the member states and partners plays a crucial role for the success of the chairmanship. So what do I mean by having the support of the member states and partners? So it's critical that Vietnam conducted consultation and dialogues with the member states on the priorities, on the way in which we conduct those priorities, and on thorny issues facing the association. So in every aspect of the business of ASEAN, consultation, dialogue, consensus building play a very critical role. So that is something that I draw from the chairmanship. So I don't have much to say more about the successes of Vietnam and the lesson that can be drawn. But there is one thing that I would like to say here is I also have the strong confidence in the chairmanship that is being exercised by Brunei right now, and the chairmanship by Cambodia next year. I have strong confidence in those two chairmanships because I think all of us share the common interest in promoting the role of ASEAN, in promoting multilateralism in our region. I couldn't think of an alternative to the ASEAN centrality in the construction of the regional security architecture. ASEAN is challenged. ASEAN have weaknesses and shortcomings, but that is the most viable, broad-based, sensible arrangement ever that we can have for our region. So with that, I would like to stop here and anticipate the Q&A section. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lê, for your very interesting insights on the Vietnam preparation for the ASEAN Chairmanship last year. And I think that now it's time for Q&A. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask our honorable speakers. You can ask them directly, or you can post your question in the chat box, please. So now it's time for Q&A. Yeah. Dr. Watson, would you mind reading the question out loud, please?
I think we have one question that came out earlier. The first question is, if Vietnam and Brunei, in hindsight, could do it again, what other good suggestions can they make? What other lessons learned can they have? Or what was lacking that they can improve upon in hindsight as far as their chairmanship is concerned that can help Cambodia? Over.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Watson. I think Dr. Lê and Ms. Yura, yeah, can you hear the question clearly, right? So could you both please answer the question? So can I start first with Mrs. Yura? Hello.
Hi, hello. So the question is, what is lacking in hindsight?
Yes.
Okay. If I were to compare 2013 and what we're doing in 2021, internally is the key difference is a more coordinated chairmanship preparation at the national level. It again it makes a difference because as I've mentioned earlier, our security challenges are quite dynamic. And at the national committee level, where we actually bring all the chairmen of the 3 community pillars together, and working close with the ASEAN Secretariat, of course, helps us to build on what Vietnam has done in the ACRF. And as most may be aware, the Brunei National Initiative of ASEAN Shield intends to again add value to all that. So I think to answer that, if I look at 2013 and 2021 is how we as chairman prepare ourselves at the internal level on that part. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Yura. So Dr. Lê, would you like to answer this question? Dr. Lê?
We should have done a lot of other things better, I believe. But during the due to the time constraint, I will go to the details here. But there is one thing that I think we shouldn't have during the chairmanship. So one is the COVID-19 pandemic. It changed the whole game at the whole completely. We unexpectedly and encounter that pandemic. And I wish that ASEAN can come up with a more robust economic recovery plan a little bit earlier than the thing that we have right now. We were able to put together the pieces to create an economic recovery plan for the association, but I personally expect that package should come a little bit earlier and more robust. In terms of the responses to the COVID-19 pandemic, I think ASEAN and Vietnam did a good job. But on economic front, I wish that we can do better. So I don't have time to go into the details here, but that is one of the things that I think something that we are lacking in hindsight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lay. I think I have a very quick question, just a follow-up questions to the previous question that been posted to you earlier, that about the specific arrangement made by Brunei and Vietnam for its chairmanship. Do you see any you face any logistic or arrangement difficulty? Did you face any difficulties in terms of logistic arrangement or the human resource in organizing in hosting the chairmanship of ASEAN during, say, Vietnam chairmanship or Brunei chairmanship? Would you mind sharing with us? Thank you. Can I start with Dr. Lay, please?
Luckily, the online meetings, hosted and organized by Vietnam went very smoothly. I was told by the ASEAN department that we didn't experience any major issues for online meetings. Almost all of them went very smoothly, and that is one of the I think achievements for Vietnam. But deeper than that is the technical and technological capability of the country. I think has been improved because we used mostly the domestically built platform for those meetings. So I believe that Viettel, the major telecommunication of Vietnam, provided the technical support for those virtual meetings, and so thanks to that, I think the meetings went very well. But of course, I think it takes two to tango. So those meetings couldn't have been possible without the very close coordination and support of other member states and partners.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lay. So, Mrs. Yura, do you have any ideas?
For us, for Brunei, I think we had the better end of the stick because we learned from Vietnam. So with regards to logistical arrangements, we had time to work it out with our local provider as well. And I do agree with our Dr. Lee that if we look at the other side of the coin, it certainly boosts our Brunei's own digital nation aspirations. Despite the challenges COVID-19 has posed to us in the region as a whole, I think it's safe to say that ASEAN member states look towards leapfrogging and making sure that we take those digital opportunities as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Yura. I think I'm going to take one round of question, the last round of question, before we concluding this panel discussion. So, Dr. Watson, do we have any question from the floor?
I don't think so, Dr. Tilly. I think we are maximum now.
Okay.
If you have no questions, I think we can just move forward to our survey.
Yep. Thank you so much, Dr. Watson. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Leighton Ting and Mrs. Yura Sumanan, for sharing your interesting insights into the preparation of your country's, of the ASEAN Chairmanship. So I believe that the lesson from Vietnam and Brunei will be very useful for Cambodia preparation next year of its chairmanship. And on behalf of Asian Vision Institute and APCSS, as well as other honorable participants in this webinar, we would like to thank you for sharing your insights, and also congratulations to on the very, your best job in this webinar. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. So I
Thank
will
you.
hand the floor to Ms. Tira. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So thank you, Dr. Turet, Ms. Yura, and Dr. Lei for the presentation and interactive discussion. And thanks our audience for the question as well. But now, may I now kindly please turn the floor to Professor Lombaka from APCSS to share the result of the participant during in the pre-webinar survey. Please, Professor Lumpy, the floor is yours.
Okay, aloha everybody. And it's an honor to be here today. My name is Lumpy. I work at APCSS. I'm one of the faculty members here. So before this event happened today, we sent out a polling survey for some of you to partake in. And we just wanted to learn a little bit more about the audience that we have here today and some of your thoughts about the preparation for Cambodia as it gets ready to take on the ASEAN chair. So we would like to share with you the results of those polls. So here's the first question. Are you involved in Cambodia's ASEAN chairmanship preparation activities? It's kind of hard to read these, so I'm going to read them for you. What the answers were. The first one was, I am leading or organizing some of the activities. The second one, answer is B, I am participating in some of the activities. Letter C, I know of some of the activities, but I am not involved. And then letter D, I don't know anything about the preparation activities. So as you can see, there's a smaller percentage that are leading, which, that's pretty typical. And then we are tied for second place with the remaining answers. So that one's an interesting. Okay, from what you know about Cambodia's preparations for the ASEAN chairmanship, do preparations seem to be very advanced, moderately advanced, just starting, or not sure? And most of the people who responded, 45% said just starting, which that's okay. And our third question, do you feel confident that Cambodia will be prepared for the ASEAN chairmanship? Here's the great news story. 59% said they are fully confident, and a close second place said somewhat confident. So things are looking good. Okay, and now this is our most interactive polling question that we shared with you. This was an open-ended question. Polling respondents were able to just type anything they wanted to type here. What do you suggest can be done to better prepare Cambodia for the ASEAN chairmanship? And there were some really truly insightful answers that were given here. I'll kind of summarize what they were on this page and the next page. But one theme that we found throughout this was collaboration and maintaining engagement with partners, stakeholders, ministries, ASEAN, the private sector, think tanks, civil society. So for sure, that's a great answer, and that's a theme. Now, one thing I might suggest to you is when you go to your breakout rooms today and you try to figure out the way ahead or some possible recommendations for the way ahead for the chairmanship, maybe you take some of these factors into consideration. They might help your breakout sessions later today. Another common answer here was preparation of facilities, and quite a few people said they hope they get back to in-person collaboration, not just virtual. Cyber concerns were pretty consistent. throughout the answers, and clear political vision from the Cambodian government on strategy, as well as they wanted to bring in experts, ASEAN experts on relations and specialties. Another common answer here was administrative structure of the chairmanship. So people want to make sure that the administrative structure is very clear and everybody understands where they fit into the puzzle. Of course, COVID, you see COVID throughout these answers. We can't escape COVID. And how do we address those concerns as the chair? And then finally, the last one I thought was pretty interesting was as far as demographics and who should be included as a platform, one of the respondents thought that we need to bring in youth, platform for international young human resources to be a part of the chairmanship to some extent. So these are truly insightful answers, and thank you to everybody who participated in the polling. And with that, I will now turn us over to a 5-minute break. Ladies and gentlemen, please take a break, but do not leave the Zoom session. We ask that you stay in the room because if you leave, maybe we have some problems getting everybody back in. So just take 5-minute breaks starting right now. Just turn off your video, turn off your audio, and enjoy your break. And we will see you back here in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, so welcome back. We have now come to the most important program, our today webinar, which is the breakout group discussion on the topic of what arrangements and processes should be in place to strengthen Cambodia preparation for the ASEAN Chairmanship 2022. So in the actual group discussion, if you wish to speak, please kindly click on participant button and then click on the raise hand buttons and our facilitator will call on you. And once you have finished your speaking, please kindly uncheck the raise button to lower your hand. ចាក្នុងនេះនាងខ្ញុំសូមជម្រាបថាប្រសិននៅក្នុង group discussion ប្រសិនបើលោកលោកស្រីអ្នកនាងកញ្ញាចង់ផ្ដល់នៅមតិយោបល់ក៏ដូចជាលើកជាសំណួរអ្វីមួយសូមមេត្តាចូលទៅក្នុង participant button ហើយ click ទៅលើ raise hand ដើម្បីសួរជាសំណួរចម្លើយហើយនៅពេលដែលលោកលោកស្រីអ្នកនាងកញ្ញាសួរហើយសូមមេត្តា uncheck ឬក៏ click ម្ដងទៀតទៅលើ raise hand ដើម្បីទុកឱកាសឲ្យអ្នកដទៃអាចបញ្ចេញមតិយោបល់បានចា next slide please. Yes, so please also be informed that you will be automatically divided into 2 breakout groups. One group will stay in the main plenary room for the discussion. So this group will be called a plenary breakout group. And another group will go to a different room, which will be called the breakout group 1. So please be notified that you don't have to do anything. If you are in the breakout group 1, you will be transferred there automatically. And at the end of the breakout group discussion, you will be transferred back to the main room. And our breakout facilitator will welcome you in your own room. Yes, ក្នុងនេះខ្ញុំចង់ជម្រាបម្ដងទៀតថានៅក្នុង group breakout group discussion គឺលោកលោកស្រីអ្នកនាងកញ្ញានឹងបែងចែកដោយស្វ័យប្រវត្តិជា2 group មួយគឺនៅក្នុង main group ដែលមិនទៅណាទេហើយនឹង group មួយទៀតគឺនៅក្នុង breakout group 1 ដែលយើងនឹងបង្កើត group មួយទៀតហើយប្រសិនបើលោកលោកស្រីអ្នកនាងកញ្ញាដែលមានឈ្មោះនៅក្នុង breakout group 1 លោកលោកស្រីអ្នកនាងកញ្ញាមិនបាច់ធ្វើអីទាំងអស់គឺគ្រាន់តែចាំបន្តិចទៅក្រុមការងារបច្ចេកទេសរបស់យើងខ្ញុំនឹង transfer direct ទៅហើយនៅពេលដែលចាប់ពួកយើងនឹង alert ជា message មុនរយៈពេលប្រហែលជា5ទៅឬក៏2 3នាទីបន្ទាប់មកនឹងយើងខ្ញុំនឹង transfer automatic មកកាន់ main room ចាហើយចា so អញ្ចឹងសូមមេត្តាត្រៀមខ្លួនទាំងអស់គ្នាយើងខ្ញុំសូមចាប់ផ្ដើមចា so thank you. You may now be moved to the designated room. The technical team, please. Okay, so welcome back to the main room, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. As for the wrapping up the 2 group discussion during the breakout session, may I now invite the facilitator of the 2 groups to report us the result of the breakout group discussion. So first, Mr. Lim Meng Hua, the Deputy Director of the Mekong Center for Strategic Study of ABI, please kindly report your result.
Thank you, Ms. Hemsatirot. David, can you please help show the slide to the participants?
Bác Ngọc Bạn.
Okay, thank you. So according to our group discussion, we have come up with six slides. I'm sorry, 6 points that could be a contribution to the preparation of a Cambodian chairmanship for ASEAN in 2022. And number one, the discussion or the group has come up with an idea of establishing a post-COVID-19 joint statement, which is a resource to mobilize and to solve the COVID-19 persistent issue, such as tourism and people movement. Number two, we suggest to have an economic recovery plan in order to, attract more foreign direct investment to ASEAN that could, in return, help contribute to the strengthening of the economic development of each individual member state of ASEAN. Number three, for Cambodia, the topic of cybersecurity has become a very sounding or alarming issue in this organization. So we are thinking that for Cambodia to be successfully preparing and chairing ASEAN for 2022, we should aiming for cyber security issue, which could, give more confidence and also provide more effectiveness and convenience to the preparation of the chair. So cybersecurity is another issue that we should focus. And number four, more involvement from relevant stakeholders inside the countries. That is to say, we need to encourage the government and the private education center to show more resilience and to promote, cultural prestige of Cambodia to the outside world, particularly to the ASEAN framework, because this will be a big opportunity for Cambodia to showcase its, prestige and also the cultural aspect of the countries. And number five, we are talking about the ASEAN Economic Community pillar. So the group suggests that maybe Cambodia could focus on the promotion of comprehensive economic recovery framework. This is also quite relevant to point number two, that we could, attract more foreign direct investment and also promote economic growth of the region. Finally, number six, human resources enhancement. Because to chair ASEAN for 2022, it is a big task for Cambodia. That is the reason why we need to engage the younger generation from both private and government institutions, because Cambodia is having a lot of human resources. That's why we need to engage those human resources, particularly the younger generations, to prepare for this task. So that is brief, and that is all for me. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Meng Ho. May I now request Mr. Jam Sok, a lecturer of the Department of International Study at the Royal University of Phnom Penh, and also he's the research fellow at ABI. Please turn on your webcam and report the result of the breakout group one.
Okay, so yeah, thank you, Sutirat, for your and also the other participants for your insightful input, on how to prepare Cambodia, to be the ASEAN chair in 2022. So we discussed a lot about Cambodia preparation, to be the chairman, of the ASEAN, meeting, ASEAN summit in 2022. So first, we suggest to have a good communication. We prepare to have, to promote, ASEAN Cambodia, chairmanship, through the television or the other media, and we also need to use English as the, medium of communication to promote Cambodia role in in ASEAN, and also to promote Cambodia ASEAN Chairmanship in 2022. And we also discussed about the way that we can promote Cambodia preparation to be the ASEAN chair through cultural communication. We need to promote Cambodian youth participation, and we also suggest to have to create the ASEAN Youth Forum for Sustainable Growth. So we try to engage more young Cambodian people, to promote Cambodian prestige, Cambodian image, to be a chair of the ASEAN in 2022. In addition to that, our group also suggests that we need to identify, issue before we taking the role as the ASEAN chair in the next 2 years. So the issue could be the traditional security issue and non-traditional security issue. So we need to cooperate with the other relevant stakeholders in the region and also outside the region. In addition, we also suggest to allow Cambodia to play a bigger role to put forward the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Because last year, Vietnam did not push much regarding the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. So Cambodia need to take a bigger role to do so in order to promote Cambodia, a role, and also the ASEAN centrality, and as well as the ASEAN relevant in the region. In addition, we need to promote Cambodia, promote ASEAN global dialogue. So last time we already have the ASEAN global dialogue in cooperation with the United Nations, World Bank, IMF, and also the ADB. So we could create, a new ASEAN, a new vision of ASEAN, global dialogue. You can call it as the ASEAN Global Dialogue 2.0, to promote Cambodia, involvement, Cambodian participation, to resolve the traditional and non-traditional issue in the region. I think that's all for my briefing. So if Carol have any more, have the slide, we can go further. Thank you.
So thank you, Carol, and thank you, Mr. Jamsok, for the brief back after result of the breakout group 1. And with regard to the result reported by our 2 facilitator, now I would like to invite Ms. Farah Monica, who actually works at the ASEAN Secretariat, to provide us with some of your personal observation and comment on the breakout recommendations. So Ms. Farah, over to you.
Good morning, Jakarta time. Thank you for the opportunity to share some personal views. I'd like to say good morning also to DG Sim Veriak and Director Gupatau Tau, if you're still around, and also the thank you to colleagues from the Asian Vision Institute. My name is Farah, and I work for the ASEAN Secretariat for the Political Cooperation Division. I've been with the ASEAN Secretariat for 10 years, but I'd just like to highlight that I'll be sharing my personal views from my experience in facilitating ASEAN chairmanships in the past few years, and that I came across this workshop also from colleagues, and I'm also an alumni of the DKI PCSS in 2019. So my personal sharing would be in 2 parts. One is the substantive part of the preparation for any ASEAN chairmanship, and the second one will be logistics. For substantive, I'd like to share that what I've seen so far is that the chairmanship priorities tend to be quite ambitious, and it cuts across many aspects of the ASEAN's work in all the three pillars. So in identifying priorities, I think it's useful to keep in mind that Cambodia or any ASEAN member state taking up the chairmanship can leverage on ASEAN's existing mechanisms. As has been mentioned in the plenary sessions and also the breakout sessions, issues have become more complicated, and that they have definitely become increasingly cross-cutting, which requires coordination across sectors and across ASEAN pillars. In this sense, I would just like to remind Cambodian colleagues that ASEAN does already have these cross-pillar mechanisms in place. We have the committee based in Jakarta, the Committee of Permanent Representatives of ASEAN. We have the ASEAN Coordinating Council, and which is always responsive towards what ASEAN needs. For example, in responding to the COVID-19, spearhead the progress on ASEAN's collective response. We have established the ASEAN a working group on public health emergencies. It is the mechanism that spearheads the initiatives. So that's one of my observation, that it is important to leverage on these types of mechanisms. And building on that first point, this is also important because these mechanisms, which involves relevant sectors in ASEAN, whenever an ASEAN chair has an initiative which is cross-cutting in nature, it would require buy-in from the sectors that would be the ones implementing the initiative. And this is why, involving everyone from the get-go would be important as well. And I have also heard that from DG Siveriak, and it was very heartening to say that to hear the DG say that it would be a whole of Cambodia approach, because this is very important. At the heart of it, ASEAN is was created as a foreign policy sort of initiative, but it has grown so much from that. So I have observed that it is very important for the MFA to coordinate with other ministries. And then moving on to the logistics, this has to do with the virtual preparations because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And one very important thing that I have also noted from, I think, I'm not sure who mentioned it before, but yes, it is important to have someone from the national telecom company, aside from the in-house IT of a particular ministry, to support the video conferences. And last but definitely not least, ASEAN Secretary is always ready to help a member state that is going to become an ASEAN chair. And we always have a consultation with the ASEAN Secretary General and the incoming chair. And I'd just like to maybe welcome, Cambodia to take this opportunity to ask us all the questions and consult us and the ASEAN Secretary General when the time comes for this consultation in preparation for the chairmanship. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you, Farah, for your brief personal observation and concrete comment. So now I would like to open the floor to honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, to post the question as you wish for further clarification. And also would like to switch the floor to Dr. Watson to read out the question for our participant and also facilitate the floor for the Q&A session. Dr. Watson, please.
Do we have any questions from the floor? Please, you can raise your hand and don't be shy. And this is the opportunity to ask Ms. Farah for clarification or any sort of issues that pertain to Cambodia's preparation for the ASEAN chairmanship. So please don't hesitate. You can also provide feedback to Ms. Farah if you want, if you don't have any questions. Dr. Tirit, you're part of it too if you want. Please feel free to do so if you have any questions or clarifications as well. Please unmute Dr. Tirit. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tirat and Dr. Watson and also Ms. Farah for your interesting comments and feedback on the preparations, on the preparation that should have been done in terms of, preparing for the ASEAN Summit. I just have a quick question to you. So, Ms. Farah, if you don't mind, may I know what kind of, let's say, logistic arrangement or human resource that ASEAN Secretariat, can provide to the member state in order to assist its preparation for the membership and for the chairmanship, Ms. Farah?
In terms of preparation, thank you for the question. Sorry. In terms of human resources, to be quite frank, the division that deals with preparation of chairmanship is actually the division that I'm in right now, and we're not a big team. So what we can offer is institutional memory, and from there on, then advice as to what Cambodia hopes to achieve with the chairmanship. So the support will come in terms of technical, any ASEAN processes and procedures in the past, and also including substantive, in case, let's say, the priority would be on economy. If the incoming ASEAN chair would be unsure of who to contact, then we would facilitate in identifying colleagues who will be able to help you in the priorities that you wish to achieve. That sort of support we will be able to provide for Cambodia. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no more questions. Thank you.
So, Ms. Farah, there's one question here that came in. The question is, we've heard from Vietnam and Brunei's experience. Based from your experience in Jakarta, what sort of lessons can you tell us, or can you share with Cambodia's team here in terms of what they should watch out for, or what sort of challenges they might confront based on Brunei's and Vietnam's experience? Thank you.
I think for Brunei, for me personally, it's too early for me to say challenges, because we're in the third month, and the summit this year is going to be in October, and we're working towards that slowly. But so far, everything is going on as planned. I mean, in terms of the work plan, of course, there are crises. We are all aware there are crises that have come to everybody's attention and is high on the ASEAN agenda. But in terms of what the Brunei has planned for its priorities, it's progressing. As for Vietnam, of course, the unprecedented challenge was that all the physical meetings then became virtual. but I think Vietnam handled that really well. The challenge for me has continued to be how do I say this? The realization that some issues really require, people getting on board from the different sectors from the beginning. So cross-pillar coordination is really something where we're really promoting right now, especially with COVID, and we had other initiatives under Vietnam that required everybody to be on board, and most times that realization comes in the middle instead of in the beginning. So that there's room for improvement on that, I would say.
One final key question just came from the chat. As documents seem adopted every chairmanship or annually, the effect of those substances appeared to does not involve rigorous monitoring. In your view, what should ASEAN do to monitor and enforce those policy documents rather than just focusing on the quantity that's being produced?
That is a difficult question. Yes, I personally also think that there are so many documents issued, and we really need to step up our game on actually implementing them on both regional and translating them also into national policies. So we are figuring ways to do that, but my view has always been to start with the coordination, because a lot of these documents cannot only be implemented by one sector only, or one ministry only, or one sectoral body only. So that is something that we really need to work on. For example, if you read the chairman's statement of any ASEAN summit, it's everything under the ASEAN sun. And for example, the MFA cannot implement that on its own. So this cross-pillar, cross-sectoral coordination is something that ASEAN really, really needs to promote on the regional, and also coordination in the national levels of ASEAN member states. That's what I think.
Okay, so I think that should be all. Thank you, Professor Farah and Dr. Watson, for the answering and the good facilitation. So, Excellency, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to an end of the breakout group brief back. And may I now turn the floor again to Professor Lombakar to take through some final pooling of our perspective during this webinar. Professor Lampi, please.
Okay, aloha, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to bring up some polling questions for you, and hopefully we get some interesting answers. So this first question is going to be based off of the answers that just came out of your breakout groups. So the question put in front of you is, what is the most important arrangement or process to strengthen Cambodia's preparation as ASEAN Chair 2022? Now, this first question, you'll have to scroll up and down, please, to make sure you can see all of the choices that are there. So the first one is establish a post-COVID joint statement, resources, mobility, and solving COVID persistence issues such as tourism and people movement. Your second option is economic recovery plan, more FDI to ASEAN to strengthen member economies and the tourism sector. Number 3, cybersecurity, enhancement required for digital fintech advancement, increase online transactions during COVID. Number 4, more stakeholder involvements. Includes governments, private education centers, to show Cambodia's resilience and promote cultural prestige despite COVID. Next is the AECC pillar, promote comprehensive economy recovery and framework. Next is human resource enhancement, engage younger generations from both private and government institutions. Next is sharing more information of ASEAN chairmanship via social media. So this one is focused on social media. The next one is a Youth Plus Forum for Sustainable Growth. Number 8, Cambodia shall propose all line ministries, international NGOs to engage youth. And then finally, ASEAN Global Dialogue 2.0 should be initiated. Okay, we'll just wait a couple more seconds. We've got 33% of you have voted, so we've got quite a few people in the room who have not voted. We'll just wait a little bit longer. But of course, even though you're going to vote on your most preferred priority here, of course, the AVI staff can take these back. There's a lot of good work that can be done and look into all of these things. So these are some good starting points for further discussion, right? Okay, we're up to, I'll wait. I'll give you 5 more seconds. If you haven't voted, go ahead. All right. And John, if you could bring up the results, please. All right, so economic recovery plan is our #1 priority, according to the people in this polling session anyway. More FDI to ASEAN to strengthen member economies and the tourism sector. So that was a clear winner by 41%. So that's pretty clear on that one. So I'll stop sharing the results. Okay, and now we have one more question. John, if you could bring up question number 2, please. So ladies and gentlemen, so at the beginning of this webinar, we asked you how confident do you feel that Cambodia will be prepared for the ASEAN chairmanship? So we're going to open up the polling and see if there's any difference in our results. Did this webinar, this meeting in any way change your perspective, change the way you feel about your confidence in Cambodia for the ASEAN chairmanship? Okay, I'll give you a couple more seconds for any last minute voting. All right, we are going to end the poll. And John, if you could share the results. All right, well, we have made some huge improvement here today. This is congratulations to everybody in the audience. So originally we only had 59% reported fully confident, but just after this 2.5 hours of meeting today, we are now up to 74% of our participants here are fully confident. And then another 19% are somewhat confident. So we made some great improvement here. So thank you to everybody for taking part in the polls. Okay, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will now turn over the floor to our next steps and closing remarks, and to Dr. Chiang Wanarit, the president of the Asian Vision Institute. Over to you, sir.
Aloha, thank you all. It is our great honor indeed for AVI to work with DKAPCSS in organizing this introductory webinar. We will have a series of webinars in coming months. Before July, we hope to produce the concrete practical policy report to be submitted to the Cambodian government. So your inputs and insight contribution are very meaningful and critical, as Cambodia is embarking on a journey to chair the third time as ASEAN Chairmanship 2022. Our deep gratitude goes to our honorable speakers, distinguished panelists, participants, and also special thanks to the members of the organizing committee. AVI team is a young team, as you can see. We are 2 years old institution, and our team members are very young. So we're still in a deep learning curve, and thanks our partner DK APCSS for helping us in organizing this event. We are very grateful, and it is already part of the capacity building for the Cambodian think tank like the AVI. Really grateful for that. Some key points have been raised during the dialogue, and I would like to highlight 5 points here. That all of us believe in multilateralism. All of us believe in ASEAN as a driving force in kind of pushing forward open and inclusive multilateralism, particularly in these regions. That is point number two. Point number one. Point number two, critical issues. Emerging issue that our region is facing, from climate change to pandemic diseases and geopolitical rivalries. These issues will remain with us for some times, especially the pandemic and the emerging threat caused by the climate change. And the complexity of geopolitical rivalries will still pose significant challenges for the ASEAN member states and ASEAN chair. Point number three, our speakers and panelists also focus on the practicality, how to achieve our objectives and our goals, looking at the issue that bind us together rather than issue that divide us together. In other words, we try to look for the low-hanging fruits in order to deliver concrete results to the people of ASEAN. Point number four, tangibility. So how to bring the concrete benefits for the people. In this regard, a lot of comments on the cross-sectoral collaboration, because ASEAN has 3 pillars, but the challenge is how to connect the 3 pillars of ASEAN, because there are many cross-cutting issues. The pandemic is one of the examples, and climate change, of course, need to involve different pillars of ASEAN. And point number 5, action-oriented cooperation. So ASEAN should not only be a talk shop, but also action-oriented organization. I think the critical comment and question on how to enforce and implement the ASEAN policy statement, that is a critical challenge for ASEAN to tackle. So what we are doing today is not only a think tank dialogue, but also do tank dialogue. So we need to take actions moving forward. So with regard to the success factors of the ASEAN Chairmanship, I think our colleagues from Vietnam and Brunei have shared a very important lesson learned with regards to the chairmanship of ASEAN. We can say that it's not the chair alone to be a kind of to make the summit or meeting successful, but it is a whole of ASEAN approach. So all the member states of ASEAN need to participate, need to support, and need to work together to build strong consensus within ASEAN. So this is a whole of ASEAN approach toward the success of the ASEAN chairmanship. Second point is the emphasis on consultation, dialogue, and consensus building, especially on certain critical issues that ASEAN member states are facing. Third point of the success factors, here's a build on rather than creating new things. So that is experience from Brunei, which is, I think, very relevant. So we need to build on what we have done and achieved so far, and move forward in order to achieve greater results. Point number 4, coordination at the national level is very critical. That also defining factor of the success of the chairmanship of ASEAN. And this is raised by our colleagues from Brunei. And I think this is something that Cambodia is also facing at the moment, how to strengthen a coordination among different agencies at the national level. Finally, 5th point is the contingency plan. And Vietnam has shared this contingency plan when it comes to the COVID-19 and how they need to move from a physical meeting to a virtual meeting. So I think a contingency plan in this regard is very critical, especially during the uncertain times caused by COVID-19. During the breakout session, I thank you all for your participation and your inputs to the breakout session, which provide us guiding questions for our future dialogue and discussion on the Cambodia Chairmanship of ASEAN 2022. And we will take your input seriously with those comments that you have raised, especially with regard to the post-COVID-19 economic recovery plan, tourism development, people mobility, cybersecurity, capacity building, and the youth participation, and of course the ASEAN Plus dialogue on SDG and ASEAN Global Dialogue. And also, I would like to take note of the comments on the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific here, because it seems that this is something not yet really taken into consideration by ASEAN in order to improve the ASEAN centrality, because perhaps some countries are not so much in favor of the term Indo-Pacific. But anyway, this is ASEAN initiative led by Indonesia, mainly by Indonesia. And also the Mekong issue should be included in the dialogue and discussion, because Cambodia is one of the key stakeholders in the Mekong issues. So how to bring the Mekong issue in the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. So those are the comments and contribution. I would like to once again thanks to all the team members and guests of honors and participants for making this introductory webinar a great success. So thank you all, and mahalo.